Welcome to American Education FM, everybody. I'm Dr. Sean Brooks. Hi there, everybody. Welcome back. All right, I've got some audio to play in this one, certainly in the education portion. I have a few geopolitical things to bring up right out of the gate here, and then just a couple of jab-related things, although this might be a bit of a longer episode because there's much to get to, much coming up here in the near future. And yeah, so let me just get to it. First of all, the other day, there were a number of stories, again, that I think hit on a particular wavelength of thought and a certain wavelength in a belief system that, again, while it hits the mainstream news, or maybe not even the mainstream, but outlets like the Gateway Pundit, and then you find it on social media platforms and whatever else, and it just kind of makes the rounds. It's not that it's unimportant, but it is another lesson that individuals, I think, need to dig a little deeper. And, of course, not believe everything that they see and not believe everything that they hear. This, of course, is a massive problem, and people don't seem to understand that there are psychological operations taking place all of the time. Some of it is not real. Some of it is real. And some of it is, again, real, and it's designed to educate and inform individuals and even wake people up. And at the exact same time, some of it is remarkably unnecessary. So I have no doubt that behind the scenes there are numerous battles taking place with groups and individuals and clandestine operations and 1,000 other things. And again, much of it is completely unnecessary. But I just want to mention these two particular stories out of the gate because, again, these pop up with regularity, and you've sort of heard me talk about this before, that I just don't know if these stories are for us. I don't know if they are for the awake individuals who, again, don't trust government and can read through the lines and can even pay attention to specifics and look at things and certainly look at evidence and remove emotion from the situation and then just look at it and say, okay, I have more questions here, or I don't have any more questions because I already have this figured out. So the first story had to do with how the other day on Monday, during apparently the eclipse stuff, the FBI released unclassified files regarding Ashley Babbitt, and much of it was retracted and 1,000 other things. Now, I've brought this up before, and you can bounce over. In fact, I'll probably just put it in the description below if you haven't seen the video before, but there's a video that was released almost immediately after January 6th, and I want to say it was, maybe a week or two later. And it described the entire Ashley Babbitt shooting, okay? I mean, it breaks the whole thing down. The individual who put the video together goes by the name of Woo's News, and it's available on my Gab under the comments section, and I think it was titled something like Everything That Went Wrong on January 6th, or something along those lines. Either way, I'll link it in the description below if you haven't seen it before. I am in the group of individuals looking at all of that objectively, having watched the video numerous times, that I don't think Ashley Babbitt is dead. I don't even think that's her name. I've seen numerous online reports on the chat boards that openly discuss how not only was she Army, but she was psyop Army, and that's Ashley Babbitt is not her name. It's not her birth name. Again, in the video, you see her climb up. There's numerous staged individuals around her. And then, of course, a gun goes off in her general direction. She falls backwards, lands on her backpack, and it's evident that she has a blood bag around her waist. It's just this extra black bag underneath her shirt. And again, as she is lying there, she rubs her face. And then when she's finally picked up by these individuals who look like they're police officers but clearly are not, again, if she were really shot, they would immediately grab her and remove her and take her out. But they just left her lying there for an extended period of time. And then, of course, when they move her, then you just see quite literally a handprint worth of blood on the ground. Well, if she were shot wherever she was shot, allegedly, there would be far more blood. And then, of course, she's pulled out of that area and down the couple flights of stairs, out into an ambulance and onto a gurney like a side of beef. And her eyes are open partially. And then that's it. I've also seen online back at the time that there was no record of her even being in an ambulance, even though you see her be thrown into one, but there's no record of that ambulance going to a hospital. And then you fast forward to her quote unquote funeral with her alleged husband and alleged mother. And all you see is flower petals. All they did was just throw flower petals into the ocean. Again, I don't think she's dead. I think the entire thing was a complete psychological operation for either good reasons or bad. I just don't like how these stories about her keep popping up as if everybody's just supposed to believe that this was a real thing. That's the part that bothers me. I just don't like lying. One way or another, I'm not a fan of it. So, again, I'll link that video in the description below if you're interested. But again, this is sort of part of the ritualized trauma that I've talked about before, where the FBI and three-letter agencies, whom we don't trust, by the way. You see, I mean, that's always the interesting part. You know, the FBI releases unclassified files on Ashley Babbitt. It's like, do you trust the FBI now? Is everybody back to trusting the FBI? So, again, I think the hypocrisy at face value is alarming. That's kind of my take on the whole thing. In fact, that leads me to the second story, which, as I'm sure you saw in the last war video, and it was making the rounds the other day, the undercover footage of this gay CIA agent talking about how they, provide a quote-unquote nudge to basically coerce individuals into doing something online that might get them in trouble, either legally or otherwise. And then he describes going after Alex Jones and, a number of other things. And, we made that a bigger deal than it was. That entire situation, in my opinion, number one, isn't surprising, and it shouldn't be. I mean, everybody at this point is supposed to know that three-letter agencies don't care about us, that three-letter agencies were developed to work against us under the guise of them somehow protecting us. I'm not doubting that they protect us from time to time, but look at everything that they've done and everything that they've been responsible for that has destroyed our country. I mean, they are the problem. Do people not know this? Are people shocked that a three-letter agency or employees within these agencies would get online and try to coerce individuals into being reckless, only to then knock on their door or come after them legally? I mean, this isn't a shock to us. So it might be for someone, is my whole point, but it's not for us. Again, I've brought it up numerous times on the show, and you're well aware of this too. The endless footage that exists on the internet of FBI agents knocking on citizens' doors because they don't like an online post that they made. They said, I think Joe Biden is this, that, or the other. And then before you know it, you get a knock on your door and they say, we just like to talk to you about a couple of things that you said online and, blah, blah, blah. And then there's some kind of a confrontation. And usually they get back in their car and that's pretty much the end of it. Although there's numerous instances of endless harassment, of course, that take place, if not worse than that. But again, is this really new to any of us? Do we not understand that this happens in our own country with these agencies against us? I just don't think it's shocking at all. The other thing too, which I thought this was priceless. I thought that in that, again, recorded sit down with clearly this gay guy who's out on these dates with this guy, this other guy. It was beyond obvious, I thought, that in that entire exchange back and forth, in particular when they were talking about Alex Jones and him mentioning Sandy Hook and having guests on his show back when the Sandy Hook hoax took place and all of that stuff, the very fact that the CIA was coming after Alex Jones because of Sandy Hook and having guests on his show back then about Sandy Hook should tell everybody that Sandy Hook didn't happen. And yet, you mention it to people and they get that look on their face like they've just smelled a pile of dog shit. I really don't understand how more obvious it has to be. Do you have to, maybe you just have to roll out the Sandy Hook's parents all in a line and have them openly admit at a press conference that we lied. That the children are alive, here they all are, they're not our real kids, and that's the way that it is. In that recorded video with that gay CIA guy, he openly admitted, of course, that he worked for the CIA, And then that they went after Alex Jones for the Sandy Hook stuff. Again, that should imply almost directly, even to a casual observer, why is the CIA going after an American citizen because they're questioning the existence of a thing? In particular, a shooting, quote unquote, and children being dead, allegedly. I mean, doesn't that disprove the entire thing at face value? You would think that it would. But again, people aren't, they're not looking deeper into the conversation that's being had and why. So then it begs the question again, do people trust the CIA? Do you now trust them? Because you either think that Sandy Hook didn't happen, or you trust the CIA. So which is it? Because in that conversation, it can't be both. You can't be like, oh yes, I trust this gay guy, I trust this CIA guy, and I trust the thing that he openly admitted going after Alex Jones for. I trust everything he has to say, and the reasons and motivations behind it. It's absurd. But instead of just watching the video or seeing the headline and just looking at it at face value, which unfortunately is what endless people are doing, they're not actually looking into it a little bit deeper and even thinking about it and saying, wait a minute, this guy openly just admitted what he admitted about Sandy Hook and Alex Jones talking about it. And the CIA's, it's their bag. It's the thing they do, is they cover shit up that they're involved in. Were they involved in Sandy Hook? Yes, they were. They were involved in everything. They were involved in recruiting the individuals, the fake parents. They were involved in the script. They were involved in the surveillance. They were involved in everything. And they used, of course, the media as their partner because the CIA owns the media. That's it. That's the real message in that CIA undercover dinner and lunch thing that, that's making the rounds. That's the real story there. But that's not the part that people are focusing on. They're just focusing on, oh, look, the CIA openly said that they went after Alex Jones and that they do this with lots of people. And that they come right up against a line of breaking the law and not breaking the law. Well, that shouldn't shock anybody. So, again, pay attention to the things that they're doing, not just how they do it and who they go after, but why do they go after these people? So then again, a thinking person would say, well, why did they do that regarding the Sandy hoax? Because it was a hoax. And then, of course, you have James O'Keefe with his latest video. Again, don't get me started. He's got another video out there where one of his employees is talking with somebody from the Federal Reserve. Do you think that the Federal Reserve is corrupt? Of course they are. Anything he gets on camera with the Federal Reserve employee talking about how they're going after Trump and making his life miserable and they hate the American people, we know this. Again, we know this. This is not new for us. We're well aware. But again, good for them. They got it on camera. Somebody saw it. That's fine. Don't forget, James O'Keefe went to Bohemian Grove. James O'Keefe is a part of Con Inc. This is why James O'Keefe still has a YouTube channel. Mine didn't last a month, but he's been on there for years. Think about that one. So he's in on it too. He's taken money from all sides. Because again, all sides fund all sides for the most part. And then you have independent individuals such as us who are out here doing what we're doing, trying to look at things objectively and call out everybody when they need to be called out. Again, in fact, let me mention this very quickly too. I mentioned this a very long time ago, and I haven't brought this specific detail up in a very long time. And if you don't believe me, you can get on YouTube and actually look this up yourself. 1 month after I gave that August school board speech in 2021, in fact, it may have been 1 month afterwards. It was, I want to say September 7th, if I'm not mistaken, could be the actual date. Although, I think it is that date. And this was coordinated. This was not an accident. James O'Keefe went on Candace Owens' show, where she was with, of course, the Daily Wire, and she basically, again, had this sit-down show like Kelly Clarkson. They sit on a couch, They talk about stuff. There's an audience, and then, sometimes they cook, and sometimes they show videos, and they have political discussions and blah, blah, blah. James O'Keefe immediately ran to her show in the Daily Wire, and they just wanted to remind everybody that when it came to the subject of education and being qualified to talk about education, that those two individuals are the ones that you should listen to. Now, again, I don't take this personally, and I'm not bringing this up to make it about me. I'm simply saying that Con Inc., by and large, doesn't want you to know that there's people like me out there who are more qualified than them to talk about the subject that they love controlling. Again, it was completely coordinated. I have no doubt in my mind it was not an accident. It was one of those, okay, we've all seen this guy's school board speech. He has a PhD in education. He's written books. He's not effing around. This guy has way more experience than we do, but instead of talking to him, let's just remind the normies that they need to listen to us when it comes to the subject of education. And so, in that episode, and like I said, if you don't believe me, you can go and watch it. James O'Keefe has a conversation with Candace Owens, and it's all about education. All of it. All of it is about how James O'Keefe goes after these school boards, and James O'Keefe goes after superintendents, and James O'Keefe does this, and James O'Keefe does that. That was the whole episode. And I remember it at the time, and I remember thinking, you sons of bitches, you know exactly what you're doing. You know exactly what you're doing, and you're going to fool a great deal of people. You're not going to fool me, but you're going to fool a great deal of people, because that's what Con Inc. does. They always do whatever they have to do to remind people that they're still around, and that if you think about going to listen to someone else and their analysis on a specified subject that person knows a great deal about, I'm not an expert, I would never use that word, but I know more than they do. And they always are there in moments like that, when the public shows up to the forefront in a way that they never have, to remind everybody that they can do it too. So that you pay attention to them and you never even hear about someone like myself. Because for them, it's about money. And for me, it's just about doing the right thing. There's a difference there. In fact, I would go so far as to say, if you recall that time, that's when the COVID hysteria and the shot hysteria was really starting to reach a massive peak. Karen Kingston was on Stu Peters all of the time. Ken Matthews was talking about the jabs. The 5 docs were doing their thing. I mean, a lot of people were talking about this, and a lot of people were getting quote-unquote canceled. I mean, the Bolsheviks were coming out and ruining people and attempting to and doing a lot of things. It was the people like James O'Keefe and Candace Owens at the time that could have done more, and they didn't. In fact, they never brought up the shots back then. They just didn't. It took them a very long time to actually first bring it up. I mean, then you had the occasional Pfizer whistleblower come to James O'Keefe. First, it was a very specified female. My apologies for forgetting her name. But she's even mentioned a few times, at least, in Justin Leslie's documentary, Project Whistleblower. And then, of course, Justin Leslie, same thing. And he, of course, lays out all the information that he had that James O'Keefe refused to show. So those individuals, both Candace and James, are controlled. This is something that is hard for people to swallow. And of course, they'll make fun of me and anybody else who criticizes them, because they'll say, well, they do good work, so shut up, Sean. Look, I mean, that's childish. That's just childish. If you're not talking and bringing up very serious stuff that can impact people's lives and save lives and keep people from killing themselves and the people around them, I'm sorry, that blood's on your hands. And that's a big problem. And that's going to continue to be a massive problem here. So, I even know that a lot of people are wrapped up in whether or not Candace Owens is going to go on the Daily Wire and talk with Ben Shapiro. I could care less. I could frankly care less. Do I want to see the two of them go at each other's throats? Kinda. Sure. I'm a human being. I like a little conflict every now and again. Who doesn't? In particular, when you know that they're both stupid, but one of them knows a little bit more than the other, certainly. I mean, they're both controlled opposition. We know that. But one of them is a little more knowledgeable on a particular subject than another. But in the end, they're both gaslighters. They both gaslight. And it's unfortunate because they missed the mark a long time ago. So again, when these stories resurface themselves, the Ashley Babbitts and, oh, look, another undercover thing where we caught a very predictable 3-letter agency guy talking about a thing that we already know. Always look deeper. I mean, you can focus on the conversation and the latest thing, but just always look a little bit deeper. Again, ask yourself the question regarding Ashley Babbitt. Why is it that they consistently bring her up? Why is it that the Gateway Pundit pushes her and that story as hard as they do? And they never mention Roseanne Boylan, who was beaten to death by a black female, allegedly, Capitol Police officer on January 6th. Roseanne and her story are nowhere to be found. But don't worry, the next congressional hearing you see, there's going to be Ashley Babbitt's quote-unquote mom wearing a shirt with Ashley Babbitt all over it again as she roams the halls of Congress. She's in on the psyop too. Because again, most individuals who lose a family member don't do what they're doing. That doesn't happen. And then, of course, they're suing the government for whatever it is, tens of millions of dollars for wrongful death and this, that, and the other. I mean, look, it's possible I'm wrong about the whole thing. But once you watch the video and you take a look at it more closely, ask yourself, is this what people really do when someone really gets shot? Is this how people really react? Or do they really jump in and actually help the individual? Again, the video is very telling. Even, and this was, I've mentioned this before, even this is strange. Dave on X22 Report, he's of course all Israel, all Ashley Babbitt now, which is sad. But at the same time, even he was the one, he actually, and I think it was on Gab, if I'm not mistaken, when that video was released, he put that video, which I'll link below, on his Gab account. And that's where I first saw it. I was like, oh, wow, okay, let me watch this. And I did, and I went, whoa. But now he talks about Ashley Babbitt like she's dead. So I've got questions with Dave on David, from X22 Report. I mean, what's his deal in all of this? What does he get out of all of this? I mean, he could do just as well to not even bring it up. If he had suspicions or he was afraid of losing funding by saying, hey, look, I don't think Ashley Babbitt's dead. I think the whole thing was a psyop to run multiple narratives, make the government look bad, and 1,000 other things. I mean, why not just stay quiet about it then? Instead of all of the sudden changing his tune now and going, Ashley Babbitt's clearly dead. They murdered Ashley Babbitt. It just makes no sense. So there's always more going on. That's my whole point. Sorry, I took 23 minutes to mention all that again. My point is again, we're at war, and this is just constantly happening. That's all. It's just constant. So let me mention this now. And all of these, believe it or not, are all tied together. These next 2/3 particular stories. The first one, I'm not going to read it because I was told not to, and I fully understand why. But you've heard me bring up the insurance game in the state of Michigan. The insurance game in the state of Michigan is kicking up to the point where property owners are going to be paying out the wazoo and business owners are going to be paying out the wazoo in property taxes, and certainly for insurance reasons. And of course, they're blaming things like weather, climate change, and all this other stuff that they, again, claim is going to get worse with time. They would only say such a thing if they were actually in control of it. And having talked, of course, with Jesse James and numerous other individuals who live in Michigan, I mean, they litter the skies in Michigan probably more so than other states. And they can change the weather at the drop of a hat, in the blink of an eye. And it is bizarre. And of course, I've brought up a lot of those as well, specifically regarding in the past the removal of flood insurance And of course, why would they do that? Well, because they want property to be destroyed, and they want automobiles to be destroyed, and a number of other things. So with that aside for a second, but still connected to this, there was also this. This was on the Gateway Pundit. I found this interesting. Again, I don't like the outlet, but some of the stories they have are interesting, and I can certainly connect dots because I'm a thinking person. It was titled, and it was from this week, it was titled, New Jersey National Guard's Weapons of Mass Destruction Team Conducts Hypothetical Search of Nuclear Bomb at New Jersey Basketball Arena. It says, during March Madness, the New Jersey National Guard's 21st Weapons of Mass Destruction Civil Support Team, WMD-CST, Delaware National Guard's WMD-CST, and Idaho's National Guard WMD-CST conducted a hypothetical search for domestic nuclear terrorists inside the Cure Insurance Arena in Trenton, New Jersey, it says. It says the U.S. Army reported that the New Jersey, Idaho, and Delaware National Guard participated in interagency biological, chemical, nuclear, radiological, and explosives training from March 25th to the 28th during the height of the college basketball's March Madness tournament. FBI agents were also involved, state law enforcement, etc., etc., etc. What are they planning? Because again, I'm not going to sit here and go, you know who I trust? The FBI. You know who I trust? The National Guard. You know who I trust? This, that, and the other. Again, what are these people planning for? Is it going to be real or is it going to be fake? I don't know. But I just find the timing of all of this, of course, during an election year to be rather interesting. And of course, that itself could be a psyop, to just panic people when there's no need to panic. Who knows? But then there's this too. And this was from Sasha Latipova on Substack, sashalatipova.substack.com, and her channel is titled Due Diligence and Art. Again, you can take it with a grain of salt if you want, but it's an interesting development here. She said, hope everyone survived the solar apocalypse on Monday. And this is a quick post to report on an interesting email I received on April 6th from Airbnb. It says, we are updating our extenuating circumstances policy and changing its name to make it easier to understand. The revised Major Disruptive Events Policy will apply to all trips and experiences taking place on or after June 6th of 2024, regardless of when they were booked. So Airbnb's changing its extenuating circumstances policy, and they're calling it the Major Disruptive Events Policy. I mean, seriously, of all the names, why don't they just call it Hellfire Missiles, Nuclear Bombs, Your Heads Will Explode Policy, Just in Case Policy? I mean, honestly, here's what it says. It says, what's changing in the policy? 2 points. They have listed here. It says foreseeable weather events. See, more weather for some reason. Foreseeable weather events at the reservation's location are explicitly eligible for coverage if they result in another covered event, such as a government travel restriction or large-scale utility outage. It says the policy will only apply to events in the place where the reservation is located. Events that impact a guest's ability to travel to the reservation are no longer covered. Your continued use of the Airbnb platform from June 6, 2024 constitutes acceptance of the updated Major Disruptive Events Policy. Now, she wrote this at the very end. She said, it seems that the insurance policies of the corporations are being revised to anticipate large-scale government actions couched as weather events, just like in Michigan, with all of their insurance policies and property taxes and things of that nature. She said it looks like new lockdowns for whatever pretense or pretenses are expected starting after June 6th. This is why this policy update reads like, quote, You might not be able to travel for your booked vacation, but if you are already somewhere, you will be allowed to return home." Unquote. She said, "Stay alert and do not comply." Yeah. Again, what are y'all planning? What do you have? What do y'all have worked out? What's coming here? Climate lockdowns? Avian flu lockdowns? Do they actually think they're going to get away with this again? Or is this going to be, again, a good guy operation disguised as a bad guy operation while Joe Biden is still in office, to make so that everybody blames Joe Biden for this when in fact there's good guys doing things behind the scenes? I don't know. It could be a little bit of everything. Who's to say? I'm just bringing this up not to panic anybody. I'm just bringing it up to connect dots. Those three stories all hit this week. Again, I just find the timing to be interesting. That's all. And I think, again, if a person has a calendar and they want to write something down or write down a particular date, June 6th is another interesting date. Perhaps something we should be paying attention to. Can't hurt. It's not like we have to lose our minds or anything. It's just, that's another red flag, I think. That's another buoy in the water, something to pay attention to, a flare in the sky, whatever example you want to use. Okay, education stuff, and I have a bunch. I have audio to play as well, and a lot of school board updates to mention, and there are a number of them. First of all, there were three major education stories, so to speak, that hit this week. This first one, I'm sure everybody's heard. This is from CPR.org. It was titled, "Littleton School Bus Aide Accused of Beating Nonverbal Autistic Boys During Rides." Allow me to get through this relatively quickly. The video speaks for itself. The video that's been released may not be the only video that exists. This particular individual, Kiara Jones, 29 years old, of course, was a paraprofessional, and she's been charged with a low-level felony on assault charges. And they have posted their bond. Let's see. It says, police say that in her 7-month tenure as an assistant on the school bus for kids with special needs, she hit and physically abused at least 2 children by pulling their hair, elbowing them in the face, stomach, and back, and flicking their faces. Neither of the boys can talk, but both were crying during the episodes on the bus, police documents say. The parents of the boys said that police told them that her abuse was systemic and frequent, and that there are likely more victims. Jones also endeared herself to several of the parents and gained their trust, all while she was abusing their children, parents said. Quote, "I literally bought her Christmas presents at Christmas time and tea when she wasn't feeling good," said Jessica Vestal, the mother of a slight 10-year-old boy with sandy hair who was repeatedly abused by Jones, according to the video footage on the bus. "It's disgusting, and every day it was. Oh, you guys are my favorite family on the bus. It's sick, it's insane, but he's safe now." Yeah. Well, look, the story goes on. Again, the video's making the rounds. It's out there. I'm sure people have seen it. She's doing all of the things on film that are mentioned, of course, in this article and in the actual report. Again, broke the kid's foot by stepping on it. She's a big gal. And as far as I'm concerned, and I'll just wrap this particular story up by saying this, we need to bring back the death penalty for anybody who abuses a child, including parents themselves. Again, if you're caught abusing a child, and it's beyond evident, even if it's on film, that should pretty much be the end of it then. And that should be well known across the land. You touch a kid, you're dead. Everybody knows that this is the one subject that was brought up numerous times in Q posts, that this is the one subject when it comes to children that I think most people can get their arms around and completely support. That we have no idea the number of people, including politicians and endless others, who sexually abuse, batter, and kill children. And we know, of course, that the school system does this with regularity. I mean, this is the way that it is. But again, unfortunately, the level of naivete is remarkably high among numerous parents and endless individuals that they would never think that their child would ever be hurt. Again, the old cliche line of I send them and I just, I think that school's the safest place that they're ever going to be. Honestly, school buses and school buildings are arguably some of the worst places for children, if not the worst places for children. And when you have the employees themselves saying the opposite, that should be a red flag. I mean, what are they going to say? Are they going to openly admit that their environments are not safe? Of course not. They'll never do that. So, yeah, very unfortunate. It's always heartbreaking to see videos like that and to even hear about things like this, but it is a regular occurrence. And people need to think about all the ones that aren't caught on film and all the ones that don't make the national news. So there you go. Not to mention, again, it's another black beating on a white on a school bus. This happens with regularity. But see, you're not going to get the talking heads and the chickens on The View talking about this particular subject. You're not going to get Good Morning America bringing this up and playing the video because it paints their supporters, quote unquote, in a bad light. Again, the media bias when it comes to racial violence is astounding, and it continues to be a massive problem. So, there you go. Okay. Now there's this. The Crumbly parents. Good God in heaven. The other day, they were sentenced to 10 to 15 years in prison. So let's review quickly, and then I have some audio to play from their latest school board meeting, which took place the exact same day. And the same nitwits keep showing up and speaking into the microphone on behalf of the students and the parents and everybody who cares about what goes on there and blah, blah, blah. But I'm going to play a couple of their comments because they actually think that they can change government. This is how stupid these people are. I mean, they are that blind, and this is their way of controlling a situation that they cannot control. So, regarding the Crumbly parents, they were detained back in 2021. The false story went out, of course, that they were fleeing or that they were running or hiding. None of that was true. In fact, it was all brought out in court that none of that was true. The next thing, of course, was that not a single crime was committed by either one of them. Not one. So they were detained, they were questioned, and then they were held in jail for 2.5 years, approximately, before trial, to face charges for something they had nothing to do with, to then only be convicted on top of the 2.5 years that they spent in jail because they were deemed a flight risk by even state judges at the state level, when clearly they were not a flight risk. These were not world travelers, these people. By the way, where's Sean Combs these days? Isn't it funny how nobody's talking about him? Certainly nobody in the mainstream media, and even many in the alternative media aren't even bringing him up. So he's flown to some island, someplace, basically free from extradition. And then, of course, he's allegedly a Fed also. I mean, the rabbit hole with him is immense. He's a gay pedophile who sleeps with little kids and Justin Bieber. We get it. Now go arrest him. And then arrest everybody else associated with him. But either way, with him aside for a minute, back to the Crumblies. Sorry for the digression there. The Crumblies spent all that time in jail and are going to spend more time in jail for something they had nothing to do with. Not a thing. And then you have these nitwit parents who consistently show up at these Oxford school board meetings in Oxford, Michigan, actually believing that if they talk with the state superintendent and the state board of education, that somehow government is going to get rid of any immunity that they have as a government entity, i.e., schools and school officials. They're so brainwashed. Not only do they send their children back to the same building where 4 murders took place, but they actually think that they can get government to remove a law that protects government from being prosecuted. You have to laugh because it's so mind-numbing insane that these people couldn't be more brainwashed than they already are. I don't think it's even possible. I just don't think it's possible. So let me get to the audio from the board meeting. I'm just gonna play two audio clips here. These are two women who were in the same room when I was there, back in whenever that was, the end of February. Both of them are brainwashed. At least one of them still sends their children to Oxford High School, and they both attended a state education meeting in Lansing, Michigan. And they decided to show up at this board meeting later in the same day, brag about it like they did something, which of course they accomplished nothing, to remind the current school board members of all of the things that they're still not doing, because frankly, they don't have to. They know that they're free from all of this. I mean, at the beginning of the board meeting, they gave themselves another award and took photographs like their shit doesn't stink and like everything is A-okay. This is how brainwashed and honestly, psychopathic these people are. I mean, that's how far gone they are. And you'll hear them consistently say, too, that, today was a day for justice, and thank God that the Crumbly parents, got the justice that they deserve and whatever else, got the punishment that they deserve, and that's the way that it needs to be, and the families who lost a child can rest a little easier knowing that 2/3 of those responsible are now behind bars, and now we need to go after the school, and we're coming after all you, and blah, blah, blah. I've already explained, again, numerous times, even to the people who live in that town, and they'll never even do it, how to go after the licenses of the people who hold them, who are still employed within the district. But then again, if they're protecting those individuals even to this day, which they are in certainly a few cases, those particular individuals, depending on the job they have, might not even need a license, which means you can go after their license all you want. But expecting the state to actually rule in your favor against the school employees who were responsible, outside of Ethan Crumbly, of course, himself, is going to be a very tall order. It's not likely to happen. And like I said earlier, government is not going to remove their own policies and laws and procedures that protect government just so that a couple of parents get what they want and allow them to go after schools when schools are responsible and negligent. Again, you can't have more proof that you need to get out of these environments than this. And yet these are the parents still sending their children to the same place that they're trying to hold accountable. It's such, you'll almost have a stroke thinking about it. It's beyond ridiculous. So here's two of these nitwits. I'll play both of their audios right now. I'll probably jump in after the first person and make a couple of comments, and then I'll play the second person. So give this a listen. Again, this was from the last Oxford, Michigan school board meeting just the other day. In 3, 2, 1.
I wasn't planning on coming tonight or speaking. This is my second school board meeting today that I'm speaking at. I was in Lansing today and spoke at the Michigan Schools Board of Education meeting with their school board and Michigan Superintendent of Schools. A few of us were there in Lansing and spoke with them. I wasn't planning on coming, but I wanted to share my day with you. We watched the Oxford shooter's parents' trial in the car before the board meeting in Lansing. Difficult to watch, but necessary. And then we watched the Michigan school board meeting taking place as well at the same time in the morning. A school board member there brought up a resolution about school immunity. Changes need to be made to school immunity, obviously. Look what happened here. And the resolution was voted down, 2 for, the rest against, but it's a start. And then we got to speak in the afternoon. We went for public comments. And I talked about my son, his experience here, my experience here as a teacher. I talked about the fact that Oakland County Schools and Lansing, Michigan, the state of Michigan, has been missing in action from Oxford. I talked about how they've abandoned Oxford kids for 2.5 years. What's interesting, I learned that most board members there have not read the guidepost report. 2 members on that board were very interested in what we had to say and brought up lots of conversation about Oxford. One, in fact, talked about how there's no accountability and is wondering why. The person, we were lucky enough that we spoke before the Oakland County, I think her name is Wanda, the Oakland County school board person was speaking about safety in Oakland County schools. She had a big presentation about kind of bragging about all of the safety efforts they had in place and how well recovery has gone in Oxford. She had Oxford actually in her presentation. We didn't know she was speaking. So we were lucky enough to go before her. So we took the wind out of her sails a little bit, brought things back to reality. And 2 school board members there were very interested in what we had to say. So this is an iceberg. We're chipping away at it. You could be a part of the solution. You could chip away at this too. You could join us. You're choosing not to. In moments of crisis, leaders stand up. Don't tell me that you care about kids when you are silent and let families go with unanswered questions. Do not tell me that you stand for kids. I don't believe you.
Thank you, Renee. Danielle Crozat.
Just very quickly, again, the state voted down a resolution to either remove or take up the issue of immunity among school employees. It was voted down 4 against 2, with 2 individuals, as she just said, saying that this is an issue that we need to take up and we need to look into this a little bit further. I'm shocked, aren't you? Aren't you shocked that a state board of education would, I'm being sarcastic, would vote to not look into the issue and not look into that matter, and of course not remove one of the policies that keeps them safe, in particular when multiple murders take place? This is how brainwashed these people are. Don't tell me that you care about kids because I don't believe you. Good. Who keeps sending their children to these people then that you don't believe? So if you don't believe them and they're liars and they're bad people, why do you keep going? What is wrong with these people? Not to mention, school boards don't make law. The business of immunity is wrapped up in law, which means they're quite literally barking up the wrong tree. Because all the state would do then is take it to the legislators, and then you'd have to get the legislators to vote on something, and they're not going to do that. Again, getting government, let alone Michigan's government, to remove something that protects them as government is impossible. It's a fool's errand. It'll never happen. You bankrupt these places by never going again. That's how you turn them over. That's how they collapse. That's how they become insolvent, and every other word you want to use to describe them. That's how it gets done. But honestly, the brainwashing is so thick. I was at a meeting today and I did a thing. You didn't do anything. You didn't do anything. It's the illusion of accomplishing something when nothing has been accomplished. The parents who have pulled their children out of that district forever, they're way ahead of the curve. They're further ahead of the curve than that woman is. Same thing with this next woman. This next woman is a lunatic too. She ran out of the room when I was talking. I mean, she's nuts. Again, this is one of the women who sends her child, one of her daughters, back to the same high school where the murders took place. Hello? Who would do that? Give her a listen in 3, 2, 1.
Good evening. Much like Renee, I did not plan on being here tonight. Actually, we just raced in from Lansing, and I had the pleasure of attending and speaking at the State of Michigan School Board meeting as well with Andrea and Renee. And I focused on explaining the impact of the tragedy, not only to my daughter, but to the victims' families and to all 1,600 students and staff in the Oxford School District. We discussed the ongoing negligence in a number of recovery decisions made. I discussed and reinforced the fact that 3 parties are to be held responsible and accountable for this tragedy. The shooter, which is done, the parents sentenced today, and that leaves the Oxford School District. Hopefully all of you also watched the victim impact statements today. I think Buckmere made it very clear, and we stand behind him and all the families, and again, all 1,600. Accountability is not done. You cannot wash your hands of this. As a parent, as an advocate, I am still seeking, along with many others, a state-driven investigation that provides all of us the answers we are seeking from start to finish on the tragedy. We are seeking legislation to require independent investigations and after-action reports immediately following and eliminate any ability for investigations to be obstructed by employees or any local entity, including insurance companies. We are seeking statewide threat assessment policies. I requested that the state send a third-party recovery specialist to audit and help us course correct our recovery plans. I have asked for actions to reform governmental immunity and reminded them that in Colorado it was done in 2 years after a school shooting. We are at 2.5 years. We are at 25 years from Columbine. We have learned enough. It's time to stop researching. It's time to take action. Accountability is not done, and I will continue to come here and fight for it. And the last thing I will say is there are 7 months remaining in your term, Mary and Heather, and it is plenty of time for somebody to step in and make some positive change on this school board. Thank you.
As a mother and as an advocate, you're not advocating for anything. You're not even advocating for your own children. What are you doing? Again, what a waste of energy. What a waste of time. What misplaced energy. Their children are old enough to read and write. They're old enough to do it themselves. And I love how these individuals, again, these parents like to think that they're involved in their children's education. No, you're not. No, you're not. And then, of course, they act like if they were to homeschool, well, that's impossible because I don't know what I'm doing. Well, you're not following your kid around school 8 hours a day anyway. I mean, your child is there reading and writing and doing what they need to do, with some nitwit at the front of the room telling them what to do and what to look at and whatever else. Well, they have no idea how straightforward and professional the online environment is when they're doing it in-home, inside the actual home, by themselves. Doesn't require the parent. Parent doesn't even have to be there. Again, you're not following your child around a K-12 school on a day in and day out basis. What's the problem? Again, these are individuals who don't know how the world works. It really is information, and the truth goes in one of their ears and out the other, and they seem to think that they're going to advocate for change, and we're going to do this and we're going to do that. You're not going to do anything. There's going to be a communistic superintendent who gets hired. She's going to look like the rest of the school board members already look. She's this miserable looking woman. She'll probably be the one that ends up being the superintendent. That's where my money is, because she's trauma informed and she's trauma this and trauma that. And they just want to hire somebody who agrees with them because that's the business. Let's hire somebody that we can get along with. Let's hire somebody who agrees with us, not who's the right person for the job. But again, I know I'm ranting about this, so I'm going to let it go. It's just, it's rearranging deck furniture on the Titanic, and they keep doing it. I'm going to come back tomorrow and put the chairs over here, and I'm going to tell myself at the end of the day that I did a thing. Congratulations, you're accomplishing nothing. You're a buffoon. And it's embarrassing. Anyway, there's that, and that's all Oxford stuff. Now, just very quickly, the Westerville City Schools in Ohio here, where my niece and nephew attend. And then I have some Brockton, Massachusetts news as well. In fact, I'll tell you what, let me mention this first. My apologies for bouncing around. This is connected to the Oxford thing, believe it or not, in sort of a backwards way. I had a family member send this to me. Remember the Virginia shooting where the 6-year-old black kid shot his white teacher in the stomach? Remember that one? As it turns out now, the ex-assistant principal, or who was then the assistant principal of that building, a black woman, is now being charged with numerous felonies as a result of her negligence in that situation. So again, this is an example of not just the hypocrisy, but the change in policy and the difference in law from state to state. So this was from fox2now.com, Newport News, Virginia, WAVY. It says, more than a year after Abby Zwerner was shot by her 6-year-old student, the school's former assistant principal, Ebony Parker, 39 years old, has been charged with 8 counts of felony child abuse by a special grand jury. The charges were filed in Newport News Circuit Court. It says the court documents, which can be viewed here, reveal Parker, being responsible for the care of the student at the school, committed a willful act or omission in the care of said student in violation of Virginia Code 18.2-371.1b. She is facing 8 total felony counts, each of which is punishable by up to 5 years in prison. It says, according to the document, the Commonwealth recommends a secured bond of $4,000 and the surrender of her passport if one exists. Parker had posted bond as of Wednesday afternoon. Criminal charges against school officials following a school shooting are quite rare, experts say. It says Parker and another school official already face a $40 million negligence lawsuit from the teacher who was shot, Abby Zwerner. It says she accuses Parker and others of ignoring multiple warnings the boy had a gun and was in a violent mood, quote unquote, the day of the shooting. Now again, I bet the Oxford, Michigan parents are not aware of this whatsoever. I bet they don't even know about this story. Now it's a different state, different jurisdiction. I mean, it might not even apply, of course. But at the very least, if you're going to show up to a school board meeting and whine a bunch, why don't you bring up this story and say, this happened, no one died, but they're now holding school officials accountable. I mean, this is a perfect example. Again, it wouldn't scare them because they're protected. But either way, certainly in this particular case, this is good news. This is a good thing. Finally, someone is being held accountable for not doing their job, for not searching a person who was deemed a threat or being violent on a particular day. So, yeah, there you go. Okay. Sorry, just wanted to mention that very quickly. Back to Westerville City Schools. Only a couple of things happened in this particular meeting that I caught. They put out a 10-minute video that was rather quick. One of their head custodians for one of their elementary schools, a female, randomly died. I think we can assume it was shot-related. They, of course, won't make that connection. The next thing that happened, and this is rather interesting, I think, there were, of course, resignations, and that's rather typical. But I've never heard of this, and I'll fully admit that I've never heard of this. And this is alarming, I think. At least I don't think I've heard of this. I'll put it that way. Apparently, the libraries that exist in this school district, where, again, my niece and nephew go, are not associated with the school district itself. Now, there are libraries, of course, that exist in all of the school buildings, media centers, whatever you want to call them. But there's an outside group that essentially manages all of these libraries. And what they voted on in this particular meeting is to approve a measure that will be on the November ballot in their local area for, of course, their libraries, that will give those libraries an extra $4-point-some-odd million of funding. So it's an actual school library levy, all by itself, which even the treasurer said is separate from the other levy that they plan on having, which of course is going to be their full operations levy like the ones we typically hear about. So I just found that to be remarkably strange. However, it makes sense, doesn't it? that schools would do that and outsource their libraries to a national or a local or state level library association or conglomerate, because of course the National Library Association is a real thing. But at the exact same time, doesn't that make sense as to why all the gay books show up without the school boards basically being able to do or claim that they can do anything? Because it's out of their purview. It's allegedly not even in their control. So again, if I was to walk through all of the Westerville media centers and libraries, I bet I could find piles and piles of gay books, of all the pornographic books and 1,000 other things, guaranteed. But now the school district, again, after writing their letter and supporting the LGBTQ community, even though it's illegal now in the state of Ohio where trannies can play in sports and cut their genitals off, they now want an extra $4-some-odd million for their gay libraries. Unbelievable. I mean, these people, they hate you, ladies and gentlemen. I don't know how else to put it. They just hate you, and they think you're stupid. And this is the game that they play. So anyway, there was that. Now on to Brockton, Massachusetts. And this was a doozy. Brockton, Massachusetts, for those who may be new to this particular situation, this is the school district that is not only broke, and I'll get into the money aspect here in just a minute because there's been a massive update regarding their finances, keeping in mind this is happening all across the United States. But they proposed, at least 4 board members out of their 7 proposed that they bring in the National Guard because of violence within their high school, if not other places as well. And again, it's not only a violence problem, it's always a finances problem, and it's a people problem, and it's an intelligence problem, and it's 1,000 things. But I wanted to go over just a couple of things. First of all, in their public comments section of their meeting this week, and by the way, all these board meetings happened this week. I mean, it was fantastic. But during the public comments section, it was revealed, of course, that apparently the school board has completely done away with their virtual school. And the excuse that they use for doing away with their virtual school, which is, again, theoretically home learning. You don't want to go to a brick and mortar building. You want to stay home and you want to learn online. They've done away with it because they think that it's going to save them money. This is not true. This is a complete cop-out. There's no way that the virtual school that removing such a thing saves any money. What they, of course, really want is they want the rear ends in the brick and mortar seats, because they don't want to lose the brick and mortar environment. I find this to be fascinating. Again, it's the entire area and parents and students and teachers and everybody just being gaslit. And many of them are buying it, and they have no idea why this is even happening. So beyond that, though, they invited back their finance guy who they've hired to basically do their finances, or at least assist in the process. I want to go through some of these numbers because they're embarrassing. In the year of 2023, their fiscal year of 2023, keep in mind this is just one school district, a big one. Their required net school spending was $276,250,953. So we'll say $276 million and change. That's their required net school spending. In the fiscal year of 2024, their required net school spending was $295,646,848. So you're talking an increase of almost $20 million just in a year from 2023 to 24. Now, in 2025, the projected required net school spending for Brockton's school district is $644,677. You're talking about a difference of approximately $38 million, give or take, and change, from the fiscal year of 23 to the fiscal year of 25, and that's their projected number. They don't have that money. I mean, that's the money that they have to spend, and they don't have it. So the spending is going up year after year after year. It's not just them. This is everybody. And they can't for the life of them figure out why. But it's in their own numbers where you can see it. And again, they show you. Much of this is wrapped up in charter tuition assessments. Much of this is wrapped up in transportation, which makes up approximately a third of their entire deficit. And then the final element, and you know where I'm going with this, health insurance. Their health insurance costs, ladies and gentlemen, from the fiscal year of 24 were $28,511 and change. Their health insurance costs for the fiscal year of 25 are projected to be $35,106,893. Again, you're talking about an almost $10 million increase. It's actually an $8 million and change dollar increase. And they can't for the life of them figure out why. Again, these board members think that the shots work and that the more shots you take, the healthier you'll be. And yet, it's right here in their own spreadsheet. It's in their own Excel document. I find this to be astounding because this is the case with everybody. Every school district across America is seeing a massive increase in their health insurance costs. And as you've heard me say, at least according to the Westerville City Schools treasurer, she said it out of her mouth, well, quote unquote, that's just the way the market is now. No, it isn't. This is a circumstance of what has occurred as a result of you believing something that isn't real, and then getting everybody together to do the same thing. But I'm telling you, these health insurance increases and scams have been going on in the education business long before I was a school teacher. But when I was a school teacher, it ramped up big time. I've told those stories in the past before, but I mean, they were docking pay from individuals directly out of their paychecks if they didn't yearly get a flu shot, get their blood drawn, their cholesterol measured, and all that other stuff, and all those other lies. By the way, of course, cholesterol is a good thing. You need it. A lot of it, as a matter of fact. Good for the brain, along with numerous other things. But they feed people these lies, and then these fake medical interventions are then used against you to penalize you, but really all they want is compliance. They just want everybody to do the same thing, and no one's really thinking. They're not saying to themselves, wow, why is there an $8.5 million increase in our health insurance just within the last year? That seems rather suspicious, because that's never happened in the past. So why is that the case now? It's because you're jabbed. That's it. You're jabbed. You're sick, you're dying, you're dead, and if you're still alive, you're using your health care more than you've ever used it. Honestly, it's, these people just aren't interested in finding the answer to their problems. They're just interested in, again, trying to pick up mercury with a fork. I know that there are a lot of businesses that hate having anybody in the business, or even outside of the business, ask the question, why? But you're never going to hear that in these meetings. They never say why. Why is there an $8.2+ million increase in our health insurance? What's going on? Some nitwit in the back will go, COVID. It's because of COVID. And then they all just believe it. And they go, yeah, COVID was hard on people. No, this is a number that's going up. This isn't a number that's leveling out. It's not a number that's going down either. This is a number that's going up. Health insurance is going up. And I've been over it on this show in depth. And you know this too, not even listening to this show because you're smart people. In the insurance game, if you don't have customers, they're going to raise the cost of their product to use their product. And of course, in the insurance game, if you use their product, they're going to raise the cost of you reapplying for the product. That's why they ask everybody all the insurance questions at the beginning of applying every year. Do you smoke? Do you drink? Do you do this? Have you had any surgeries, any conditions? All the people who are jabbed are basically legally bound now to say yes to all of those, which is only costing them more money, which means the insurance company can raise the cost if they want because they want to make more money, because they have to, because some of their clients are dead. Many of them are. So they got to get the money from someplace, so why not get it from the still living and the still sick? That's the scheme here. But Brockton can't figure it out. You can't fix that school district. I hope it crumbles. I really do. Online is the only way that any of this is ever going to exist moving forward. Which again brings me to this very quickly. And then I have a local school board issue to get to also, with a little bit of audio to play too. Yeah, I'll get to that in a minute. That's jacked up big time. In fact, it has to do with Friday and what's occurring nationwide on Friday in every American school, whether you knew it or not. It's disturbing. This was tossed to me again by our Virginia professor friend. And again, it has to do with finances clearly. This is from charlottesvilletomorrow.com. And it was titled Charlottesville Area Only Free Head Start Program Closed Suddenly, Leaving Nearly 200 Families Without Childcare. It says parents and caregivers at Monticello Area Community Action Agency are used to scrambling to find backup childcare. Every week, Joaquina Mason said that she would receive a notification that the daycare would be closed, sometimes just hours before its scheduled start time. It's been like that since August, she said. Now, the weekly cancellations have turned indefinite. The Early Head Start and Head Start programs, which maintained 9 centers in the city of Charlottesville, Abmerley, if I'm saying that right, probably not, Fluvanna, Louisa, and Nelson counties, closed down permanently on March 31st. I don't know, quote, what people are going to do, said Mason. What should they do? Spring break is already here after that. What are they going to do? Again, they use them as daycares, as we know. That's generally what they're set up for. And they're set up for single parents who have young children, and they're basically daycare facilities or preschool facilities by and large. But even these are shutting down because they're becoming insolvent. Again, it's not only an attendance problem, I'm sure, but it's clearly a funding problem also. Which again brings me back very quickly to the federal assistance program that I mentioned in the last episode. This particular professor reached out to me also and basically said, Sean, a lot of these parents are just flat out lazy. I mean, they just don't want to fill out the FAFSA applications, and they just don't want to fill them out because, again, they're flat out lazy. AJ Gochik sent me this too. He said one of his friends who is familiar with this entire process and is a president at a college said this about the whole FAFSA applications. They said the feds changed the FAFSA and screwed it up royally. They have known this since August, but typical feds, they have dithered. They said that this cuts across social and economic lines. Lower income types will simply give up. This is Dem-made, Dem-owned problem. Democrat. Says the feds screwed the pooch. Your children will be fine, but the lower income families will struggle. Elitists in Department of Education did this. And then he said they cannot get the cash, I think, with the FAFSA. The Dems just shit all over their primary constituents, unquote. Yeah. Among endless other reasons, I'm certain. I mean, it's incredible. But again, this is what happens when you are dependent on government to do everything for you and you don't do things for yourself. You're at their mercy. They say jump, you say how high, they say just kidding, and then they leave. In fact, in the same story, she highlighted this particular aspect of it. There's this little snippet here where one of the parents is speaking out, and they said the following, quote, this is from a Tina Dooms, says she's scrambling to find a child care center for her 3-year-old child who has speech problems. Tina apparently just said the following, quote, I have no babysitter, said Dooms. It's pretty bad. They ain't gave us no help. Unquote. Yeah, well, hopefully they give your child some English lessons too, because they're not getting it at home. But either way, yeah, they ain't gave us no help. Government ain't gave us no help. No kidding. They're never going to give you help, because that's not why they're there. They're there to manipulate you, rob you, and get you to vote for them because, well, that's the game they play. It's astounding. And then there was this. We had this back and forth with a Virginia professor. They openly stated that the business of artificial intelligence and plagiarism in the students' paper writing is just overboard this semester. I mean, they use the program Turnitin, which I know a lot of universities use. I used it when I was in graduate school. And you use Turnitin to submit your papers. But Turnitin also has plagiarism checks, and of course there are endless other programs that have plagiarism checks. And you can run all of these papers through these plagiarism checks, these AI checks, and you can actually figure out whether or not particular students are actually submitting the same paper and just rewriting different names at the top of the paper and saying, well, this is my paper. And then you run it through the program and it goes, nope, sorry, somebody else already wrote that paper. I mean, it's happening constantly. This is what AI is doing also to the entire business. These students are flunking their classes because they're plagiarizing everything. And then, of course, because certain professors, I'm sure, don't want to have to run all these papers that their students are writing through these AI plagiarism check software programs. And, of course, they just don't want to do that because it's time consuming for them. And of course, teaching them to read and write is not at the top of their list of things to do for these professors, unfortunately. But at the exact same time, for those that are doing it, this is the roadblock that they've hit. But for the ones that don't, what do? Instead of having their students write papers, they have them do group projects all the time. So it's just one group project after another because the group projects decrease the likelihood of plagiarism, although the group projects unfortunately increase the likelihood of certain people doing the project and other people not. Unless, of course, you have checks and balances built in, and they can grade one another on their performance and so on and so forth. But you talk about the dumbing down of American education. It's happening right now, ladies and gentlemen. Again, we're continuously living through it, and the evidence is just piling up. It's astounding. So, speaking of the dumbing down of American education, here's what's happening on Friday nationwide. I was unaware of this, and thank you to the individual who sent this to me. They know who they are. On Friday, April 12th, the Gay, Lesbian, Straight Education Network, or GLSEN, or GLSEN, an American nonprofit organization, is having their Pride Day nationwide for all the marginalized gay, lesbian, transgender, so on and so forth. And of course, they say gay, lesbian, and straight because, of course, they have to bring everybody together like we're all in agreement on things. This is happening in every American school on Friday because GLSEN is a school program. It was started by school teachers. They're interwoven into endless school districts, if not all of them, certainly the public ones. And again, if you need a day to leave American education permanently, my recommendation is you pick Friday, April 12th. They're handing out stickers. They're doing all kinds of nonsense. It's the day of silence. Rise up, take action, they say. So here's what it says specifically regarding this stupid day. Day of No Silence, 2024. Rise up, take action. History of Day of No Silence started in the mid-90s by 2 college students. There you go. Day of Silence has expanded to reach hundreds of thousands of students each year. Every April, students will go through the school day without speaking, ending the day with breaking the silence rallies to bring attention to ways their schools and communities can become more inclusive. Now, I'm having a flashback. I'm not kidding. I can't believe I forgot this. When I was a school teacher, in particular, my last year, in high school. It would have been my last spring semester as a school teacher. I recall now some students, so this would have been, good Lord, 2013. Some students were walking around quite literally with tape on their mouths. And they had a card that they even handed out. And they were handing it to their teachers, and including me, when they would come to class, and they would say, that's what this is. It's for this day, and this is why we are wearing tape on our mouths and we're not talking and blah, blah, blah. I'll never forget this, though, because now that I'm having this flashback, it's all flooding back to me. I remember this. I took the card and I immediately started laughing. And I looked at the students in my class who were wearing tape on their mouths, and it was only a few of them. It wasn't many. And I said, so let me get this straight. You think that putting tape over your mouth is creating political awareness around you wanting rights for having freedom of speech and freedom of expression, which is a right that everybody already has no matter what, as long as you are a citizen in the United States legally. But somehow having tape over your mouth and forcing yourself to actually not talk all day long is somehow making a point about what? I mean, it made no sense. It was one of the dumbest things that I had ever seen. And I think, of course, one of the things that they'll do on Friday all across the nation is they will have, they basically hand out these stickers that have the message on the sticker for the students to then wear on their mouths. And they hand this out, and it'll be rainbow flags and dildos as far as the eye can see, ladies and gentlemen. I mean, that's one of the things they do, I'm certain. I guarantee it's ramped itself up a little bit since 2013. But here's what it says. It says, 2024 Day of No Silence, no is in parentheses, with more than 800 anti-LGBTQ plus bills introduced last year. We must rise up and take action. GLSEN's Day of No Silence is a nationally recognized student-led demonstration where LGBTQ plus students and allies all around the country and the world protest the harmful effects of harassment and discrimination of LGBTQ plus people in schools. And then there's the silent option. It says, for those who may not feel safe or comfortable speaking out, the option of participating in a silent protest remains available. This ensures that everyone can contribute to the movement in a manner that aligns with their comfort level. Shut up. Just shut up. This is so dumb. They can't get anything straight. These people are so flippin' confused. Oh my God. And it costs money. Well, wouldn't you know it? $22.50 for a bunch of stickers. There's a bandana where apparently you can gag yourself. A Day of No Silence bandana for $12. There's bracelets, and there's pins you can wear. Great. This is Marxism and Bolshevism in a nutshell, but they don't teach Marxism and Bolshevism and communism in school, do they? Nope, and here's why. Because they're the ones that created this nonsense. So here's what I'm going to do. On Friday morning, as a part of Pride Day, or the Day of No Silence, I'm going to send them my second to last Substack article describing the final agenda of the LGBTQ agenda, so to speak, in education, so that they can get a nice glimpse of all the gender reassignment surgery and what it really means, and that this is really what you're supporting. There will be at least 3 school districts that receive this email. Guaranteed. Brockton, Westerville probably, and my local one. I mean, why not? And then maybe even Oxford, Michigan, just for good measure. Honestly, these people have lost their minds. Fortunately, however, there's this. This is one of the responses from one of the parents in the area who remains anonymous in this post, and then I'm going to read the response from one of these other nitwits who lives in the town here. This is from one of the Facebook groups, and they said the following, quote, THS families need to be aware of a couple of things. Talawanda High School is having a Pride Day this Friday, 4/12/24. My child will not be attending school that day. These ideologies are against our beliefs, and the school should not be sexualizing our children, period. They want to portray this as anti-bullying campaign, but kids are given a sticker at school entrance, can participate in a day of silence and wear pride outfits. Public school is not the place, ! And then they wrote number 2. Talawanda parents are concerning themselves over schedules and missing the fact that Talawanda administrators are asking for astronomical raises. There's a typo there, but the administrators are allegedly going to be taking a 17 to 25% increase in their pay. It says, who in public service gets a 25% increase? Already mismanaging money from our tax increases. And then they said others have posted on this as well. The scheduling is a distraction. The district puts kids on the bottom of their list, looking into other schooling options, unquote. Well done. Pull them out now and permanently. You don't have to look for other school options. I mean, I even heard Alex Newman, who I agree with on many things, and we disagree on a few, but he even said on Dave Janda's show not that long ago, he said, pull your children out first and do it immediately. And then you can figure out what to do anytime you want once they're out, but pull them out first. There's none of this, I got to figure out where to put them and what to do with them because they're a loose cannon and I don't know what to do. They're not a fart in a skillet. They're a human being. And if you're an effective parent and you've taught them correctly, they'll do what you tell them to do. Other than that, pull them out now. Yes, I agree with that. I agree with that standpoint and that approach. Pull them out first and permanently. Then do the homework. And hell, have them do the homework on homeschooling options and homeschooling programs also. Anyway, one of these nitwits who lives locally apparently responded to that particular parent and they said the following. Pride has nothing to do with sexualizing anything, children or otherwise. Among other things, it's about showing support to a group of people who are bullied, outcast, and marginalized by ignorance and hate. We should be supportive and not hateful, especially to children. And they may have written more than that, but it got cut off. Well, pride's a deadly sin, sweetheart, and apparently he doesn't understand that. And by the looks of the icon picture, it looks like this limp-wristed dope is actually married to a woman. Weird. God, how much more soy could be in his diet? I wonder. Just disgusting. It has nothing to do with anything he said. It has to do with supporting the mentally ill and the perverse. And no, we don't want to do that. That's not our thing. You want to support the mentally ill and the perverse and the people who didn't have opposite sex attention when they were growing up? That's your problem. Don't make it everybody else's problem. Again, the local high school even had the TV production class make an announcement about this at the very beginning of their show. And that's on YouTube. It's beyond embarrassing. Again, everybody just blindly goes along with the latest thing because they're stupid and they don't know what they're actually supporting. They never think that there's a larger agenda that is evil. They always think it's all about anti-bullying and it's all peaceful and everybody just wants to get along. No, that's not what it's about. Has nothing to do with that. So there you go. I mean, why don't we turn April 12th into National Leave Public School Day? Just turn the tables on them. Flood their email inboxes at the district level with your removal notice. We're immediately unenrolling our child from your school district permanently starting today. Have a nice day. That would be a nice trend. That would be a nice thing to happen. Time will tell. One more thing here. Just got this from Jesse James, and I'm going back to the Oxford school shooting thing real quick. This has to do with a statement that someone made apparently on Facebook regarding the Crumbly parents, and this is well summarized. It's basically everything that I've said, but I wanted you to hear someone else's take. They said the following, and then I'm going to move on to jab stuff. They said this about the Crumblies. They said, quote, government power grew today in alarming ways. 10 to 15 years in prison, credit for 2.5 years served. for the Crumbly parents for failing to foretell and stop the extreme outlier, unlikely, premeditated evil act of another person, and despite their having violated no criminal statutes. It's all about circumventing the legislature and creating exciting, novel, broadened horizons in case law, establishing newfound judge-made government powers for prosecuting and jailing parents. And then they said, quote, groundbreaking, precedent-setting, evolutionary direction in the law if they're convicted, unquote. That's what they keep telling us. So what if the Crumblies, as canaries in the coal mine, were the test case and had no proper notice beforehand of the illegality of their actions? This is the progressive evolutionary direction the law should follow in these modern times. Oxford shooters' parents get 10 to 15 years in prison for roles in massacre, it says. Yeah, he's 100% right. It's about rewriting the law and using them again as the canaries in the coal mines and the test dummies in this whole thing. Not a single crime was brought up in all of that. I'm done talking about it. I'm done talking about Oxford until they hire their communist superintendent, and I get to say I told you so, and I'm going to. Okay, jab-related things. Very quickly, I quickly threw together another Substack. I put it up on my Substack page, theamericanclassroom.substack.com. Bounce over there and check it out if you're interested. Again, it has to do with May-Thurner syndrome and how this is sort of the default diagnosis for all of these jab cases, in particular if they're among females. So if you ever hear of a female who you know to be jabbed, who gets a blood clot, usually in their left leg or left hip, 9 times out of 10, if not 10 times out of 10, they're going to be diagnosed with May-Thurner syndrome. Unfortunately, they're never going to point to the actual shots as being the reason, the COVID nanotech bioweapons. And the excuses truck is going to back up, and they're basically going to create all of these particular scenarios and hypotheticals, and then they'll point to those as if that's the reason why they have the blood clot in the location of the body where they have the blood clot. Are you a female? Have you ever been pregnant? Do you exercise? What's your diet like? Well, this happens sometimes. Yes, it's rare, but it typically happens again between individuals in their early 20s and all the way to their mid-40s. But don't worry, it's nothing that maybe you've done. Sometimes this just happens, is what they'll tell people. And by they, I mean doctors. And this is absurd. This is, again, and I highlighted in the article, this is the problem with the medical industry, is they are not trained to find the problem. They're not trained to find the thing that causes the thing and then examine what the real cause is. Again, as I say in the article, when you damage your DNA by introducing poisons into your body. When that happens, you keep your DNA from doing the thing that God intended for it to do. We don't get blood clots because of stress. That's the constant excuse that gets used by many doctors. Well, they're under a lot of stress at work and, a stressful job and stressful relationship. That's not it. That isn't it. Blood clots are brought on by poison. And because this nanotech poison is unique in the way that it is, to where these blood clots aren't even blood clots, they are joined together in a way that they've never been joined together before, where they are discolored and almost immovable. Again, they're rubber bands. They stretch, and it takes. There's pounds of pressure that have to be pulled in both directions in order to snap them. That's not your average blood clot. But again, they don't know this, and they're certainly not admitting it because the very doctors doing the treating are the ones who injected them in the first place. The irony. This is the cycle of the brainwashing that is impossible for these people to break in many cases. But when that DNA is damaged permanently, well, then you have AIDS or you have VAIDS if it's brought about by inoculation. And the S in VAIDS and AIDS stands for syndromes, hence May-Thurner syndrome being one of them, which again is a blood clot that's typically located in the artery in your lower back, in your lower lumbar. And then it wraps around your front side and then shoots down your leg. But what we also know, of course, about these nanotech shots is that individuals are clotting in their veins, which means these are not blood clots. These are worse. But this is unfortunately the default setting. And as I say again throughout, and certainly at the end, this is being written about in peer-reviewed articles. There was one just last month about an uptick in May-Thurner syndrome. So, as I brought up in a previous episode, I would encourage people to keep their ear to the air regarding hearing about this more often, in particular among jabbed women who have a blood clot. Were you diagnosed with anything? Ask them that kind of question. Or see if they say, well, I now have this syndrome. I mean, there you go. So this is just unfortunately going to be the default setting for many of these doctors, and it's not the reason. Syndromes don't just pop up out of thin air. That's kind of the whole point. Here's something else that doesn't pop up out of thin air. Cancer rates rising. Why could that be? This is from the New York Post, and I'm going to play a clip here. Dana Perino's stupid face, and Bill Hemmer, Miami University grad Bill Hemmer, oddly enough, from Fox News. Not that that matters. He's a nitwit also. But this is from the New York Post. Cancer rates rising in young people due to accelerated aging, according to highly troubling new study. Now, what's that thing that's also been written about that causes accelerated aging? Oh yeah, it's the COVID nanotech shots. See, same terminology. It's the same stuff. Here's Bill Hemmer and Dana Perino in 3, 2, 1.
The American Cancer Society estimating more than 2 million Americans will be diagnosed with cancer this year, more than 2 million. That'll be a record high, but the number of overall cancer deaths is dropping. Fewer smokers, early detection, improved treatment all contributing to that. So the U.S. is getting better at treating cancer, but we're falling behind on preventing it. Let's bring in Dr. Mark Siegel for more on this, and nice to see you. I'll throw some numbers your way here. 2 million new cancer cases, as we mentioned, about 600,000 cancer deaths. Among the estimated new cases for men, about 30% prostate, 11% lung, 8% colon and rectum. For women, breast 32%, 12% lung, and 7% colon and rectum. Does that match up with what?
Correct. And here's the headline. The headline is lung cancer. We're doing a great job. We have saved, by the way, 4 million people over the since about 1990 with all of these interventions, early screening and stopping smoking being key. Not only have we prevented lung cancer a lot of the time, but when we find it, we're finding it earlier. Now we're taking it out with a robot before it spreads. Huge improvement in 5-year survivals of lung cancer. But the flip side of that, you were already alluding to, which is colon cancer, especially in young people, is on the way up. Prostate cancer, uterine cancer. Why is this? Obesity. I think simply we're gaining weight as a society. We're more sedentary. Our diets aren't as good. There's more preservatives in our food. All of that. So we're smoking less, but we have a problem with lack of exercise and obesity. All leads to inflammation, which leads to cancer. Another point is that our insurance system is focused on disease, not on prevention. In other words, the more people that are sick, the more people that they have that they can then give an intervention to, and premiums go up. We're a disease-oriented system rather than a health-oriented
system. So the number's
system.
not getting higher because among younger Americans, because the detection is not higher? I can... Let me try and rephrase that.
Okay, let me fix that.
But you're saying it's obesity, right, for younger Americans. And I'm asking, if younger Americans are being tested more often, are doctors just finding it at an earlier age?
They're not being tested more often. We have a number. We use 50 years old to start our colonoscopy. We use 40 years old to start our mammograms. We're starting to move in that direction. HPV-oriented cancers, human papillomavirus, sexually transmitted. We have to be on the lookout for that. Younger people don't want to be screened. They want to be out there and have fun and live their lives. We have to reorient our screening system towards more young people.
I hope you were screaming and yelling and shaking your head as you heard that. That's right. The Dr. Siegel, ladies and gentlemen. The same Dr. Siegel. I'll tell you what. If I could jump through the screen and strangle a person, it'd be him. The same Dr. Siegel who told people to get your jabs. Get as jabbed as you possibly can, right to the brim. And then if you're not jabbed and you're a school student, you need to walk around school and wear a pin on your vest or your jacket or your shirt that says, "I'm not vaccinated," because we need to isolate those that aren't vaccinated. He said that on Tucker Carlson's show. I played it on this show when Tucker Carlson was still on Fox. They're still listening to this guy. He's still a Fox News contributor. You've got to be shitting me. Obesity? That's his excuse? That's it? That's all he's got? And the quotes in this study, by the way, which came from the UK, it said, quote, just because a person, this is from, let's see, who is this from? Dr. Brett Osborne, a Florida neurologist and longevity expert, often discusses the concept of accelerated aging with his patients. He said, quote, just because a person is 40 years old chronologically doesn't mean that they are 40 years old biochemically. No kidding. So what have they done to themselves chemically that's aged them? What's the thing that they've put in their body that's damaged their DNA and taken years off of their life, if not decades? There have been endless studies that have clearly said that the COVID shots will take upwards of 25 years off of your life. This is a thing. But don't worry, Dr. Siegel thinks that it's sedentary lifestyle, people being overweight, and the solution is that we need younger people now getting screened for cancers. He needs to be hit in the head with a tack hammer because he's a moron. I can't believe that this is an actual, well, I mean, I can. He is a medical doctor. He does have patients. People actually listen to that person. The number of people that he's killed and probably inoculated has to be through the roof. It has to be. I'm blown away. I'm almost speechless. I mean, it's the woolly mammoth in the room. No one said, what about the shots? What about vaccination? It's the cause. Yeah, I mean, yeah, our food is poison. We know that. And yes, people don't take care of themselves, and some people still smoke, and people drink too much and whatever else. But I mean, honestly, what's the one thing everybody did in the last couple of years? Well, not everybody. Certainly not us. But again, what's the one thing that the vast majority of people actually did over the last couple of years? What could it possibly be? Is it new cheeseburgers at Burger King? Or is it that, those multiple rounds of liquid that people can't name a single ingredient to, that they didn't even hesitate to thrust into their bloodstream, nor ask a single question, nor think for themselves and actually look things up? Honestly, I'm starting to lose it here. But let me end on a positive note, although this is a bit, depends on how you look at it, I suppose. But let me end on this. This is from the Substack pandauncut.substack.com. And I'm reading this because Dr. Mike Yeadon liked it. And I like Dr. Mike Yeadon, and he knows that COVID isn't real, and he knows that there was no pandemic, and this article lays that out rather succinctly. It was titled, and this was published on April 9th, it was titled, "Every Single Aspect of the COVID Narrative, quote-unquote, is Fake. There was no pandemic. A summary of Panda's position statement of the 1st of March, 2024. This is written by a Jonathan Engler. There is a full statement which can be read there. There's a link to it, and there are 6 bullet points here. It says the following. Number 1, there was no pandemic by any reasonable definition, which must surely include that large numbers of previously healthy people in all age groups perished, whereas there was no discernible rise in global mortality in 2020. Correct. Number 2, the pandemic believers respond to, number 1, above by claiming that there was nevertheless the spread of a novel pathogen from a point source, quote, lab leak of the virus engineered through gain-of-function research, unquote. They say that this was a nasty virus, quote unquote, and the harm caused resulted from mishandling, quote unquote, or the lack of early treatment. However, A, There is no evidence that viruses can be engineered so as to have dangerous pandemic potential. Lab leaks happen all the time. B, the purported waves of deaths and serious illnesses appear decoupled from spread, quote unquote. There are no clusters or ripples of deaths or unusual illness evident. The virus bizarrely obeyed national and administrative boundaries to create different pandemic outcomes, quote unquote. And C, the virus and disease claimed to have been caused by it were certainly not novel. COVID was indistinguishable from the features of known respiratory infectious illness. Any purported novelty is explainable by observation and confirmation bias, augmented by the most extensive and powerful propaganda campaign ever waged on humanity. 9/11 was a big one, but in the medical field, yeah. The lie of virology and this particular COVID script were without a doubt the biggest in the medical industry, no doubt. Number 3, it says, all the harms reported can be explained by a combination of massive disruptions in health and social care, maltreatment, non-treatment, or inappropriate treatment, especially of the infirm elderly. Misattribution of deaths to COVID is another one. Another one is other harms consequent to the response to the false perception that a novel deadly virus was circulating. And then the final one, data fraud. Yep. Number 4, it says, the notion of something spreading, quote unquote, resulted from the explosion of the number of oversensitive and underspecific tests, especially PCR, being carried out which were merely finding a pre-existing signal which had already become widespread and, crucially, without being noticed at all before the purported emergency. As these positive cases, quote unquote, were found, a number of perverse incentives created a positive feedback loop involving more testing, especially of contacts, quote unquote, more cases, quote unquote, demanding more testing, and more cases being found, and so on. Yep. Just the cycle of the lie. And one lie hooking into another and hooking into another, and there's your entire gear shift right there. Number 5. The timeline associated with the early weeks of the COVID era stretches credulity. It says we are meant to believe that the following all happened spontaneously within a 4-week period. December 27th, 2019, the Hubei Hospital reports cases of pneumonia of an unknown cause. January 7th of 2020, the new virus is isolated, quote unquote. January 12th of 2020, sequence uploaded to internet from a patent in Wuhan with an otherwise unremarkable phenomenon. January 22nd of 2020, a dashboard purporting to report cases and deaths globally in real time is set up and launched by Johns Hopkins University. And January of 2020, or January 23rd rather of 2020, the very next day, a paper describing a validated test developed without access to patent material is published, having been quote-unquote peer-reviewed within 24 hours of submission. It's amazing, isn't it? That people don't know this. That all of this was a computer-generated fake pandemic. Again, a real injectable illness that was in flu shots. I have no doubt about that, combined with 5G, turning that on, making people sick, 100%. But honest to God, it was all, the statistics themselves were all set up on a computer to make it look like something was happening that wasn't. And then it says finally, number 6, the lab leak, quote unquote, and zoonotic spillover, quote unquote, theories are the two constituent parts of the deliberately engineered false dichotomy. By permitting argument between these two choices alone, the question as to whether we actually had a pandemic at all, and what therefore causes the myriad harms, is avoided. Yet both theories have the same endpoint, the sustenance of the pandemic preparedness industry, quote unquote, which, flush with the hugely successful COVID, quote-unquote episode will no doubt delight in the prospect of lucrative reruns. The oft-repeated references to the next pandemic, quote-unquote, even by some apparent COVID dissidents, quote-unquote, is a foreshadowing of their intentions. Because remember, as they say, quote, any rogue lab can engineer these viruses now, unquote. And then they wrapped up and said, after all, as we have argued, the actual escape of something from a lab is not required to generate a pandemic, quote unquote. The mere seeding of the narrative of escape, rollout of testing, and resilient social contagion is all that is needed, unquote. They're 100% right. Jonathan Engler here with this article is 100% right. All you need are people who want to push a false story and people who will believe it. And that's it. And then you have to have, of course, the infrastructure to go along with it and the fairy tale, and then it's game over. And he's also calling out some of the Con Inc. people who are talking again about, well, we got to watch out for variants and we got to watch out for this and that. Live your lives, ladies and gentlemen. We'll be just fine. Keep your eye on the enemy, but don't live in fear. It's all manufactured, because it's always been. With that said, thank you for listening. It was a long one. Again, I'll link a few things in the description below, including my latest Substack. Have a great weekend, and I'll catch you on Monday. Peace. Thank you for listening to American Education FM. Make sure and check out AmericanEducationFM.com for more information. Take care and God bless.